Shoot 'em ups have come and gone, but few have had the staying power of Space Invaders. For more than 4 decades, Taito's influential arcade hit has continued to spawn sequels, spin-offs, remakes, reboots, reimaginings, and, well, pretty much everything else you can think of. This is a franchise so popular that in 2020, we not only got 1 Space Invaders collection, but 2! And there wasn't even a big anniversary to celebrate. Well, the one we're going to talk about today is the recently released Space Invaders Forever, a new Switch and PlayStation 4 compilation that features several of the newer entries in the Invaders verse. It's a slightly overpriced collection that includes one of the best Space Invaders games, one of the worst, and one that is a baffling mashup you can't play with a controller. Yeah, we have a lot to unravel in this review. The one thing that Space Invaders Forever does extremely well is that it shows us how versatile the franchise has been in recent years. What we get here is a port of the 2008 masterpiece Space Invaders Extreme, the baffling multiplayer-focused Space Invaders Gigamax 4 SE, and Arkanoid vs. Space Invaders, which had previously only appeared on mobile devices. Although they were all birthed from the same series, these 3 games are radically different in not only look and style, but also gameplay and focus. Let's go ahead and start with Space Invaders Extreme, which is the most popular and most ported game in the collection. It starts out like any other classic shooter. You're a small triangle spaceship that sits at the bottom of the screen moving left and right. Above you, or rather in front of you I guess, are row after row of space aliens, all working their way down to the bottom of the screen. It lulls you into a false sense of familiarity before yanking the rug out. This is a game that just keeps getting crazier the longer you play it, and I love every second of the chaos. You're essentially doing the same thing that arcade gamers did all the way back in 1978, only this time the rules have changed in some pretty dramatic ways. There are a bunch of power-ups, all kinds of bonus stages, video footage playing in the background, and massive bosses to fight at the end of every level. Just about the only thing that hasn't changed is the actual Space Invaders, the little pixel enemies that menace Earth from the sky. But don't be fooled by their appearance, because this time around the aliens come in all kinds of different colors and sizes. Before the end of the game, you'll run into gigantic aliens, tiny aliens, green aliens, red aliens, shielded aliens, and way more. It's the kind of thing that reminds you just how cool 2D shoot-em-ups can be. Now, if Extreme is an example of the best Space Invaders can be, then Gigamax 4 SE is the exact opposite. This is a slow and plodding exercise in repetition that attempts to take the series back to its roots. It certainly looks and plays like the early arcade installments, but it lacks the fun. This is a multiplayer-focused game that uses the full length of the widescreen display to create a long play field with the most invaders you've ever seen at once. Unfortunately, that's about the only noteworthy thing about Gigamax 4. The truth is, this long line of Space Invaders is just one of the 3 phases this installment insists on repeating. When the game gets bored of you trying to clear the screen, it switches things up by telling you to inflate tiny invaders by blowing them up. That's more fun than the long line of aliens, I suppose. The final phase is a boss stage, which is really the only time the game shows any signs of having a pulse. I don't know, perhaps this is a riotously fun time with a bunch of friends on your couch shooting away. But as a solo player, I couldn't wait for the monotony to end. Thankfully, the 3rd and final game in the collection is a big improvement over Gigamax 4. Arkanoid vs. Space Invaders is a port of a mobile game that hit Google and Apple devices all the way back in 2017. It's basically a mashup that has you controlling one of those Arkanoid paddles as a way to ricochet enemy fire back at the pesky Space Invaders. You also have to contend with colored tiles that get in the way, but don't worry, because a lot of them hold power-ups that'll upgrade your ship and add extra time to the clock. This game trades the traditional 2D shooting for puzzle solving. The stages are bite-sized and always have a defined goal, such as kill a certain number of Space Invaders, destroy a bunch of tiles, and so on and so forth. This seems easy at first, but the clock is always ticking and those damn tiles definitely get in the way, especially in the later levels. This is a really fun game that single-handedly freshens up both Space Invaders and Arkanoid. I mean, it's hard enough to breathe new life into one aging franchise, let alone two. Unfortunately, there's one really big drawback to Arkanoid vs. Space Invaders on the Switch. Unlike the two other games in the collection, this one can't be played on the television. In fact, you can't use a controller at all. This is strictly a touchscreen game, which means that you can only go through this clever mashup in handheld mode. Look, don't get me wrong, it works well using the Switch's display, but it would have been nice to have the option to at least play it on the television with a controller. Is that asking too much? So, while it's a little bare bones, this is a solid collection with two great games and one that you probably won't play more than once. The most disappointing thing about the collection is that it doesn't include Space Invaders Extreme 2 and lacks anything resembling historical context. And with a $30 asking price, I would argue that this collection is a bit on the overpriced side. But if you can get beyond some of the missed opportunities and the steep price tag, you'll find that Space Invaders Forever gives Switch and PlayStation 4 owners two must-buy games. And also Gigamax 4 SE. Ugh. One of two 2020 collections honoring the venerable shoot 'em up franchise, Space Invaders Forever collects 3 recent installments into one neat and tidy package on the Switch and PlayStation 4. The compilation includes great games like Space Invaders Extreme and Arkanoid vs. Space Invaders, as well as the awful Space Invaders Gigamax 4 SE. The no-frills approach is disappointing, and it probably could have used another game or two to justify the asking price. But Space Invaders Forever makes a strong case for why this franchise continues to be loved and cherished after all these years. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What old school franchise needs a box set collection? Oh man, there are almost too many to name, so if you end up listing like 300 franchises, then guys, I totally get it. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, I'm still waist deep in reviews. Look for my take on Raji, Axe Cop, Shot in the Dark, and a bunch more new releases in the coming days. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.